Hello, and welcome to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host and City Manager, Doug Bartosh. And today we're here with Rudy Rodriguez, who's our Deputy City Manager and also our, budget czar, guru. And Rudy has been out talking to a lot of people, different groups, Chamber of Commerce, neighborhood groups, about a proposed use tax. And there's always a lot of confusion about tax, about a use tax, and always a little consternation about taxes in general. So again, we're trying to get the word out, and that's why we have Rudy here today to talk about the use tax and why it's being proposed. So, Rudy, what is a use tax?
Well, the use tax is exactly that. It is a tax on things that you use. However, it's a little bit different than what they call a transaction privilege tax, or also called the sales tax. The sales tax is collected by the seller. A business goes selling something, they collect the sales tax. The use tax, the liability falls on the owner. But the whole idea behind the use tax is we're trying to protect our local businesses. Take for example, if you if you go out and you buy equipment or something, a company buys equipment, brings it into the community, titles it here in Arizona, or in Cottonwood specifically, they have to pay a sales tax. You and I would buy something locally, we have to pay a sales tax, but if we go outside the state or outside the city, we may pay a lesser sales tax, which is an advantage. However, to our local businesses, we lose that sale, and to the city of Cottonwood, we lose that particular amount of tax. But again, the big difference between our sales taxes and our use taxes is that one is collected, that the sales tax is collected by the seller, and the use tax is collected by, it has to be submitted by the purchaser of the item. It's not uncommon here in Arizona that there is a use tax. As a matter of fact, here in our area, just our area alone, Sedona collects a 3% use tax. Camp Verde collects a use tax also. Prescott and Prescott Valley both collect a use tax, and Chino Valley, Dewey Humboldt, and Flagstaff all collect a use tax. And the whole idea is they're trying to protect their businesses, protect the community, encourage people to purchase here locally rather than going out and purchasing elsewhere. However, if they do find a deal elsewhere and they do go ahead and bring it into the community, they want to be able to collect it, because anything we don't collect here locally basically is a burden we put on all of our other users, all of our other citizens.
And so it's those who collect it are just not in this region either. I mean, it's really the majority of cities across the state collect a use tax.
Sure. We have about 55% of the communities in Arizona collect this use tax, and the remainder of us, such as Cottonwood, do not. So there is a widespread, and more so as budgets get tight and the state continues to shift a lot of our state shared revenues to their coffers. Cities and towns are looking for ways to go ahead and recoup some of that money back that they can't seem to collect because it's going to the state or outside of their communities.
So let's take a couple of examples here of somebody who could be subject to a use tax.
Take for example, you're out of state. You purchase a vehicle, and shortly afterwards you move into Arizona. Well, anywhere in Arizona, you're going to collect, the Department of Motor Vehicle will go ahead and assess a 5.6% sales tax. And if you go to any of the other communities that currently collect it, they're going to also ask you to collect their 2% to 3%, or almost 4%. In Cottonwood, it would be the same way. If someone from outside the state moves into the area, they have a fairly new vehicle, the state will ask for their registration, their paperwork, and they'll go ahead and assess the difference between their sales tax that they paid over there and the sales tax that should be collected here locally.
And that's probably an important point too, is it's not the complete 3%, which is what our use tax would be if the council accepts that. It would be the difference between what they paid in taxes
Correct.
someplace else versus here.
Correct.
So if they paid 3% tax somewhere else, then they wouldn't pay 3% tax here as well.
Exactly, exactly. And that's one of the confusions. Is a lot of people believe that it's another tax on top of a tax, that now it's going to be 3%, they're going to get another 3%, and in reality that's not the case. As you pointed out, if they're paying 3% or higher anywhere else, obviously we're not going to collect it. However, if they're paying 1-2%, yes, we would collect the variance between those two.
Yeah.
Another case is, take for example, if you have a chain restaurant moves in, especially the bigger chains. Obviously, many of them bring in their furnishings and equipment from other locations. They usually have a central supplier. If they don't collect the sales tax there, then when they establish their business in Cottonwood, they would have to go ahead and pay that use tax once they establish themselves here too.
So, you know, and I know there's always a lot of concern about, okay, you know, I buy a TV on the internet, you know, and it costs $500. I mean, is that subject to this tax?
No, the threshold we've been talking about is $1,000 and up, and the city of Cottonwood, as all these other communities, are not in a sense a use tax police. They're not going to come, you know, see you walking in your driveway with a new flat screen, and we're going to send someone over and bang your door down to come in and collect a tax on it. That's not the purpose of this. This is an honor system. Our big concern is, of course, those big restaurants and chains, hotels that move into the area. Excuse me. Those people, individuals or companies that buy vehicles and equipment and move them into the area, or actually some big companies that comes to mind would be utility companies that come into the area and establish storage facilities for poles, pipes, or anything else. If they don't pay a 3% tax somewhere else, then they too would be subject to that particular tax. But we're not going to be policing it to that point where we're going to be bothering people at their front doors because they've purchased something that's over $1,000.
And in terms of actual revenue that this is going to produce to the city, what are the estimates?
The estimates sit roughly at about $75,000. You know, when we tried to come up with an estimate, we had places that had, you know, well below the $75,000, and we had others that were well above the $75,000 for similar sized communities. It all depends. A lot of it has to do with what kind of economic development you might be having. If, for example, if you have a place that suddenly gets 2 or 3 restaurants, especially big chains, or a hotel, then obviously their use tax is going to go up dramatically. But if you're not growing very fast, then obviously your use tax is not going to be a huge amount. But again, it's not that. The idea is that it's a fairly small amount, but we're not concerned about that as much as we are concerned about protecting our local businesses and making sure that they too get a fair shake as far as you know, the retail or businesses that they can potentially have.
You know, and certainly I think that would be one of the questions that we have heard is, you know, you're talking $75,000 in the context of the revenues that the city brings in. I mean, that's really pennies. And again, why do we want to do this?
Again, it's leveling the playing field is all we're trying to do. Is you know, if there's something that can be acquired here locally, why go out to save a few bucks somewhere else? And I understand it. I would do the same thing. However, I also understand that it takes a lot of services to run a community, and if I have to go ahead and pay another few bucks to make sure that I have police, fire, water, sewer, and great parks and a recreation center, that's what it's all about, is making sure that we try to protect our businesses, and that little extra revenue, though not very much, does help us to facilitate some of the programs, especially here in the community.
Let's go ahead and take our first break and then come back and join us and let's talk a little bit more about the use tax and then talk about our revenues in general here in the city of Cottonwood. Come back and join us.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction.
A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit cottonwoodcares.com.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
I'm your host, Doug Bartosh, and we're here with our Deputy City Manager, Rudy Rodriguez, talking about use tax. And Rudy, we talked about what a use tax is and kind of what the impact is. Are there other examples that we need to know about? I mean, I guess we would probably get questions about, well, you know, I bought a car 5 years ago down in Phoenix. Now am I going to have to pay more taxes on that car?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure exactly what the threshold is with MBD. That's something that we still need to work out. However, if it's a casual transaction, if you bought a car from someone down in Phoenix or here locally or anywhere, and it's an arm's length transaction, it's not a dealership or anything, it's something you won't have to worry about. The use tax does not apply to arm's length transactions or casual transactions. However, if it is a business and you do charge less than that 3% sales tax, motor vehicle will make those calculations. The city of Cottonwood is not expecting to spend any money on this use tax program. It just kind of gets put in together with all of our other tax issues that we have, and our auditor goes ahead and schedules their audits when the time comes. So there's no additional cost to the city of Cottonwood. But to put people's mind at ease, a casual sale is not subject to it, and we're not going to be knocking down your doors to find out what you paid on that new flat screen that's up on your wall. So we're not trying to be heavy-handed. We're just trying to make the level of playing field for all of our local businesses, what we're trying to do.
And I know this is being considered by the city council. There was a first meeting. I mean, certainly there's been a work session meeting. There's been a first meeting for the council to consider it, and then there's another meeting coming up where the council may or may not approve this. And that meeting's on January 16th at 6 p.m. at the City Council Chambers located at 826 North Main Street in Cottonwood. And again, I know the council is getting input, both positive and negative, about this tax. And so if you are interested, make sure you come out and join the discussion. And should you have any questions ahead of time, certainly feel free to call myself, call Rudy, and we'll certainly fill you in the best we can in terms of how something related to the use tax could impact you. You know, and this brings up that topic, particularly as we get into budget season, because we're already planning the budget for 2018, 2019. What is our revenue picture looking like, Rudy?
Well, our revenue picture is, as far as our main revenue stream, what happens to be our sales tax, is trending right about 5%, which is good for most for this our community. However, we still have lags in a lot of other areas. We can't solely depend on our sales tax. We have state shared revenues. We have fees, user fees that we have to collect. But for the most part, we're holding our own. We're doing well. But there's a lot of things that we would like to do that were on hold or put on a back burner because there aren't enough revenues to go around. We've got streets that we need to work on, but there's not enough revenues to do all of our streets, so we're programming them slowly to get them done. And so our revenue picture is relatively good. It's no better, no worse than other communities. The only thing is that we unfortunately have a lot of departments that are not available to other cities. We've mentioned before, we're a full service community. We have water, wastewater, which a lot of communities don't have. We have an airport that most communities don't have. We have peculiar as we have a library and a pool that some communities don't have or are funded through some other sources or
Right.
property taxes. So we have a full service community living on 3% sales tax, and that's difficult to do.
And as you and I were talking, there's been a little bit of a discussion which I think was perpetuated during the last election that somehow Cottonwood is a real tax and spend community, and it couldn't be farther from the truth.
Mm-hmm.
We're the only community in Yavapai County that doesn't have a property tax. We have a 3% sales tax, which is our predominant source of revenues. And you don't pay for a fire district in the city of Cottonwood. And so Cottonwood is really a pretty good deal when it comes to tax burden. The problem with that is we rely so heavily on sales tax, and I think this brings us full circle back to the use tax, is getting people to shop local, spend their dollars local, so it generates that sales tax is really important, and that's why we were looking at the use tax is to encourage that local shopping, because when people buy on the internet, those sales taxes go to wherever they purchased that product.
Right.
It doesn't come back to Cottonwood, and so consequently, we're not seeing the growth in sales tax that we really should be seeing.
Right. Well, we had some reports, of course, all vary, but local retailers were expected, or actually did about a 6% increase in sales in retail sales. That's retail, brick and mortar. Internet sales were over 16%, which obviously 30, 40 years ago, 16% would have been great. 10 years ago, 5 years ago would have been excellent for any community to do 16%. But that just says the kind of market that the internet is taking. Those dollars, many of those dollars are not coming back to our community. Though we are busy and we do produce a lot of goods and have a lot of goods available, unfortunately the internet has become an ease, and I'm one to blame, that it's easy to get on the internet, shop and get something shipped to you for free, and you don't have to leave the comfort of your home. But the downside is we're not spending our money in town, we're not creating more jobs, we're not providing the necessary tax dollars to continue functioning our great community.
You know, and certainly this isn't a Cottonwood problem. This is a national problem. This is an issue that is impacting every city and town across the nation in terms of internet sales, and how to recover those dollars that formerly were in your city that are now going outside your city. And you know, just the numbers that you were talking about, I was hearing on the radio today that even through the holiday season, there are still stores that are now looking at closing. Macy's is closing a whole bunch of stores. Kmart is closing like 35 stores, and it's because people are shopping more on the internet, which in a way is convenient and it's a good thing, but on the other hand, there is an impact on that, both to the retailer,
Correct.
who begins to recognize they don't need brick and mortar anymore to sell products, and then to the local cities and towns who are relying on that brick and mortar retailer to generate internal economy in the city, and that sales tax which supports city services. So it's a growing crisis in this country that I think is going to need to generate some serious discussion on how we handle this as time moves forward. Let's go ahead and take our next break and come back and join us. We'll talk a little more budget.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction.
A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit cottonwoodcares.com.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Doug Bartosh, and we're here with Deputy City Manager Rudy Rodriguez. And we were talking use tax and kind of clarifying points on that. And certainly if you have any questions about that, please give us a call. We'd be happy to answer those questions. And on January 16th, the City Council will be hearing that issue for the second reading. So if you have an interest in attending, coming down and expressing your opinion, we'd really appreciate that as well. So we started talking a little bit about budget and the fact that we're in the budget process now, preparing for this next year's budget, which begins for cities and towns across the state as well as the state government. It starts July 1st. It's not a calendar year budget. It's a June, or actually a July to June budget. So we talked a little bit about revenues and what I'd like to do, Rudy, is kind of explain to everybody the process, because it's a little bit different this year, and we're trying to obviously create more transparency with the budget and get more people involved in the budget process, so we get more input from citizens across the community. So tell us what the process is this year.
Well, to understand budgeting is it's actually a year-round process. Though we kind of designate about a 6-month period, or actually about an 8-month period now, as the budget process. But for the city of Cottonwood, the process starts in November. We've already started sending out forms to our department heads where we get back their goals and their accomplishments. We're already receiving requests for additional staff or adjustments to what we call reclassifications to employees. Those will probably finish out by the end of this month or the first part of February. The big difference this year is that we're actually, besides starting earlier, we used to start in January, February, we're starting in November now, is that we're going to have a lot more meetings. As a matter of fact, the same 16th that we talk about use tax, we'll be making our first set of presentations, and it's our revenue update, where we'll basically be talking to our council and the public, if hopefully we'll have a public there, about the budget process, how we're doing it, remembering that this is like a 300+ page document. And for a lot of people, it becomes very cumbersome because there's a lot of links between, page 250 and page 8 up in the front of the document. So the whole document is interlinked, and everything feeds into summaries and other things up towards the front of the budget where all the summaries are at. But in reality, we'll be talking about the fund structure. We'll be talking about the different departments, and every department has 4 sections of it and talks about personnel, capital projects, maintenance and operational issues. And it also has a statistical section and has an informative section, has a letter from yourself at the front of the budget. So there's so many things involved in the budget. This year, we're kind of trying to call it an education year, where we're actually trying to get the public and the council to understand this huge document that we put together, rather than trying to condense everything into 3 days, and we hammer them from 6 o'clock till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and it's just a lot to digest in 3 days. We're giving the council an opportunity up front, and the public too, to sit with us, understand how it is, ask the questions. We'll be breaking out our departments for different meetings, rather than trying to cram them all in 3 days over the next few months. Talk about capital at one time, rather than trying to cram it all. So we're spreading it out through various work sessions and meetings. We'll be putting it up on our Facebook page, and also on the website when our meetings are, and we encourage the public to come join us, because it's really important for the public to sit and understand this 300-page document and understand how it really works. And again, you can always call us or call you or myself and sit down, and we'll gladly go over all 300 pages if they choose to. But it's an education process. It's a big document, and I've been working with it for 30 years. So it just kind of becomes a second nature to you. And many times, unfortunately, we take it for granted that everyone understands what's in that document, and it isn't. And
it is challenging because we have so many different sources of revenues. We have so many different, we have general fund, we have enterprise accounts, we have so many different departments. It is hard to really understand the document itself, let alone the process.
Right. And one big change this year from the last 19, 18 years or so is that I'll have someone else doing the presentation instead of myself. And that'll be, I think, a refreshing view, having a different set of eyes they're putting this budget document together. I'll still be sitting in the background, but however, I think that having a different person up there this year that is explaining the document, because over the years, slowly they've been taking over those responsibilities. I think that they have a whole different perspective on how they should present the document. And I think it's as I've already seen the presentation that's going to be going up there, I think it's refreshing to see that there's a different perspective, and I think a nicer perspective on how the budget is put together.
And as Rudy said, he's been at this a long time. I've been at it a long time. We've both seen a lot of municipal budgets, and what seems second nature to us may be very confusing for people in the community. So certainly we want to try and make it as understandable as possible, and certainly we don't want to make it look like we're trying to hide anything or shuffle things around to make it even more confusing. It's just the process that we have to go through in terms of a municipal budget. And it's no different than any other municipality or at the state level either. And it's just it's a challenging process and a challenging document to understand. Any last comments, Rudy, that we want to share with the audience?
I think we always try to encourage people to give us a call on anything that they might have, financial or otherwise. Mingus Street, water issues. We encourage people to not take things for granted that are being said or publicized out there. If you have a question, give us a holler. We pride ourselves on the work we do, and we don't hide things. We try to be as transparent as we possibly can. And if there's something that they think that they have a question on, or they think that we should put out there, by all means, give us a holler. We'd be more than happy to try to put that information out there. We don't want people not feeling comfortable coming in to visit. We want, our offices are always open. I know you and myself keep an open door policy. Not that you can just walk in, but if you make an appointment, you're more than welcome, and we'll make you feel right at home.
Well said. And I think it's important for people to get involved in their local community government. This is the government that is closest to the people. This is the government where you can actually make a difference. I know all of us may get a little frustrated sometimes with the federal government, even the state government, but your city governments, you can actually go out and talk to people, meet people, and we have a city council who is very receptive to public input. So please come out and join us for the budget process and learn about it and ask your questions. And certainly, if you can't come out, as Rudy said, send us a note, give us a call, send us an email, and we'll get the answers that you need. Thanks for joining us on Inside Cottonwood, and come back and join us again.